thank you all so much for being here. I guess, do you all, okay, so Kevin has started the recording on that. Great. Okay, so because I'm on a computer right now that has a very small screen, I'm not going to be able to see chat as we go through this stuff. So just please holler out. First thing I just wanted to review is that today I'm hoping that we can go through the final changes, or final, right? Always an asterisk. To the survey, so that we've got a version that can get into Qualtrics. And of course, we can always make tweaks in the future, not a problem, but I think we're really close. So I wanted to just review some of the reformatting I've done. There are a couple of comments from Katie and Caroline to resolve. One place where I'm wondering if we want to do some pruning of some of the options. I couldn't just, I like them all. I don't want to prune them, but y'all might want to. And then there's one place where the wording is really awkward, and I'd love to reword it if we can. If we have time, I would love to show you the entry page that I've drafted that would serve as kind of it'd be parallel to what an informed consent would be if this was research. So if we have time, we'll go over that. Okay. Were there any other areas that folks wanted to be sure we covered today? I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then. As I already remarked, of course, because I opened the document today, I played around and made a few changes and edits, but nothing dramatic. So we're pretty much where we were. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that you can see this. Is that fairly visible for folks? I know it's small on my screen. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. So it's too big. Sorry, this is one of the reasons I don't use this computer much, is because the mouse is really weird on it. It's very sensitive. Okay, yeah, it's not going to let me do it. Okay, all right, that's as good as I can get. Okay, great. All right, I'm going to go down to questions. So what I did with this was, so I had gone through and I was like, yeah, we've got about 100 questions. And then I realized that with the follow-up questions, when I numbered those, we ended up with more like 250 or 270 or something, which was really gross. It just felt really uncomfortable. Oops, why is that? Okay, hang on, I'm gonna make a space in there. Okay, there we go. So what I did was, instead of having these all as simple as individual questions, I made one question. Since you enrolled at this school, has someone done the following things? And then I put all of the options into the responses. And again, I can't see folks. Were there any comments on that?
Do you want minor suggestions here, like or do you want to just skip it because we've already minor suggested our way through so many of these?
Let's do the minor suggestions, Kelly.
I just think that would read better if it said, has someone done any of the following things, not just has someone done the following. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay.
And will there be instructions there, Rowan, that will say, please check all that apply, or?
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, so we're asking about, so where we lose the precision here is that we are asking, so if anybody did any of those things, then tell us about it. Okay, and I changed this so that it was just, the question was, how many times did these things happen? I don't know what this is going to look like when it's formatted, but so now we will ask when and where the things in the previous question happened and who did them. So we're not going to know, specifically for each type of harassment what happened, but we'll know in general those things that met the definition of sexual harassment were experienced in these ways. Are people okay with losing that kind of detail, not having all these questions for every single possible type of harassment?
I'm comfortable with it. I do have one other suggestion, but I want to make sure other people can comment specifically to comfort or not.
I think I feel comfortable with that as well.
Standard caveat, like I could micro suggest on this for the next 15 years of my career and never come to a conclusion on it, and probably cycle back on several things. I'm just noticing, which I really appreciate, this is a good stage to be at, like that question 15, like let's say somebody checks all three of those boxes on 14, right? The first three boxes that are all substantive and specific. And then 15 asks, how many times did these things happen? I think that's clear, but it's also clearly lumping them all together, which I think that's at least part, if not entirely, what you're asking about. Are we comfortable with that? I mean, I think that what we've learned, sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here perhaps, but like we have to go that route. Otherwise we're going to have a bunch more individual specific questions trying to pull it apart. And so, yeah, I think we've negotiated to probably the right place here. Like somebody who hasn't been through any of the conversations we've been through might come to that and say, well, you really should pull this apart. But if we do that, we're proliferating again, which we don't want to do. So sorry, that's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I think that's the right way, the right place to be.
Yeah, there's basically like 5 or maybe 6 follow-up questions for each of these or for all of them. And Kelly, to that point, is there a way that we can phrase 15, thinking about all of the things? How can we phrase that so that it's really clear that, well, one of those things happened once and one of those things happened twice, so how do I answer this question?
Yeah, that's great.
You rephrase it to, did any of these forms of harm happen more than once? If so, how many?
Something like that.
Well, we seem to have a contradiction in the singular versus plural in 16, right? Which is, to Holly's suggestion, that lines 14 and 15 up, but then 16 is about a singular, not a plural. I mean, and not because of Holly's suggestion, like we're going to have this problem solved no matter what. So like, the suggested language, I think, would clarify it. But I think we need to ask ourselves, what is it that we want them to do? Oh wait, if yes one time, sorry, I'm lost that detail there. Sorry, strike that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure.
What does it say for more than one time? Can we look at that? Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
The comment I was going to make to continue to further comment or complicate this is that if they say, yes, it's happened 10 times, how will someone respond to about when did it happen? Because if they, and this I thought for like most of the areas, especially domestic and dating violence, a lot of the things we're asking about occurs regularly. And if someone's like, or if someone's experiencing sexual harassment in the classroom, they're experiencing a lot, they can't say it only happened in the month of May of 2024 because it's happened for an entire quarter. So I'm curious, how someone will feel they're able to answer that question.
So if they respond, so the reason that we're asking if it happened like 0 to 10 plus times is because that's one of the recommendations that came out of the sexual experiences survey victimization, the revised one. So they found that if you ask people, it happened, people feel like however many times you put down is like the normal So they were less likely to say it happened 4 or more times if you only said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 or more. So that's why we've got the 0 to 10. So if they respond that it happened once, then this is going to kick them into this set of questions. If they respond that it happened 2 through 10, then they'll get this set of follow-up questions. So about when did it happen the first time? About when did it last happen? And then think about the experience that was the most serious or had the biggest impact.
Thank you.
I didn't where that happened.
That was my fault for not reading closely enough. And I thought,
That's
and I was
okay.
just skimming it of when did it happen? I'm like, they might not be able to answer. So thank you for pointing that out.
Right. And we're trying to be, we understand too that people may have trouble with month or year, because, it happened in the fall, it happened in the fall semester of my freshman year, but I don't remember what month that was, right? So we're trying to be as general as possible with that. I know I have trouble remembering what happened last fall. So
I think that's right. I think that we have the right approach here. I think most people will be willing to guesstimate what month it was and what year it was. And if they don't, if that takes too much energy, they can default to unsure or I don't know. So I think we have that one dialed in at the right level. I mean, we certainly don't need any more precision than that to make meaning out of it, right?
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes these things will line up with, it happened during orientation or it happened during fall break or something like that. And so it takes a little cognitive math to figure that out, but I think folks can pretty well do that. So getting back to this, so thinking about how to word that, you said you had at least one experience. How many times did these things happen? How many times in total did these things happen?
As best you can recall, how many times, how many total incidents, something like that. Isn't this where, Holly, didn't you have a suggestion about this one, or was it the previous one?
Yeah, it was this one.
Beats me. I think it was can you go back to the last question? That will help me remember what we're trying to ask. Since you're around the school, has someone done any of the following things? Okay, yes. If you experienced any of the following, how many times did any of the above occur? So just kind of grouping it so that it's clear that they can talk about all of the instances as a whole versus only one or the other, I think.
I also have one other question. It is for the sentence right before this section. Now we will ask when and where the things in the previous question happened and who did them. I feel like who did them here might not be first a very accurate way to capture what we actually ask, and also might cause some problems here because if people experiences are very afraid of retaliation. If you just say who did them, they would probably think that, okay, do I need to name this person? Like if I name this person and I submit a survey, does it mean this person will be notified that I called them out for this? And what I'm gonna face if they realize that we didn't really ask any identifiable information of the perpetrators here, but it doesn't mean that people can have being hyper vigilant about okay, what do you mean by who did them, to how much how many details I need to reveal about this person. And also people might feel that, okay, finally I got a way to notify the authority that this person is causing problem, and then we are not giving them any chance to actually say the name of this person. So I would suggest that maybe saying that the person, whether that person is connected with the school is maybe slightly better than just directly ask who did them, because we actually can't really identify like who. We can only know how this person is associated to the school.
I love that. Thank you so much for adding it. I wanted to add that similarly, as this could be a really alarming for some people around like, why do you need this level of detail? And I'm confident we were going to say that ahead of time about why we're asking these questions. And I think it might behoove us every time we ask to give a reminder about why we're asking this level of detail from people. Even if it's just saying that the House bill's making us or something, you know what I mean? But I do think we need to give a reason why to help mitigate some anxiety for folks.
I think that's a really good point. Both of those points are really great. And I also think what will be done with this information would also be very helpful, because I think to the point of, oh, if I'm sharing this, like something might be done about it. I think it would be very helpful to say, this is what can come from this survey. And as a reminder, if you want access to resources, here's how to do that. Because I do think there are going to be folks who fill out the survey and are not going to read at the beginning until they really get into it. And then they're starting to answer these questions and then realizing, oh, now I see what these questions are. Now I'm feeling uncomfortable and I forget what it said at the beginning. So I find that particularly with students, having the information as much as possible is not, there's no way to overdo it. I think the more times we can remind them, the better.
That's a really good point. We will have it on the entry page, and then we also will have it at the beginning when people start answering the questions. So, right. So this is the second. So it'll be in the entry page. It will be in this page. Your school may, this will describe the kinds of experiences students at the school are having, and your school may use the information to help improve programs that prevent or respond to sexual misconduct. I worry that if we put that before every question, that we are going to like make it just too redundant for people and they'll lose interest.
I don't think we have to do it before every question, but maybe before every section. That was kind of at least my vision.
Or maybe just like repeat that very concisely right before when we dive into the very detailed question about when, where, and who. Just mention that this is completely anonymous. Your identity is protected, is confidential, and all of your answers are confidential, and it wouldn't be like, I don't know how to frame it, but like if you want to report an incident where someone, here's the Title IX office and how to contact them, things like that. And this is not the purpose of this survey.
I think one of the things that'll be helpful is when we see it in Qualtrics, because if we have to have a couple of paragraphs of text before they actually get to the question, I am a little concerned about that. So I'm wondering if we did that maybe just for each section and put, they will, your school, we ask these.
So Rowan, I'm with you. I would say I don't think that we need that paragraph that you're working on right there. I think just a single cue is all that's needed. So like, first of all, I just love what everybody said in the last 5 minutes. This is such good awareness about thinking about surveys. And Val in particular, I like the it just had not occurred to me the importance that if you use the word who, people might actually think there could be a consequence. So like making clear that there's nothing anybody can do about that's just very, very good, keen awareness. So I would say, but here's what I think. I also very concerned, Rowan, like you are, about putting too much text in. If somebody transitions from one section to another and is met with nothing but text, they might exit, right? Like there's a psychology of how quickly do I get to the next question, right? And if you can't see it, especially once you're 1 or 2 sections in, you may just exit quickly at that point or something. So I would say, to kind of pull all of these threads together, and I think this is where you're headed anyway, so my apologies if I'm sort of summarizing what you all have concluded already. But like, I think that Holly's right. People might forget, Holly and Carolyn both said this, if they might forget what was in the intro, but if we mention it once, we probably don't need to mention it every single section, except in sort of increasingly shorter language, right? Just remember this is confidential, and right, so that it doesn't end up taking up a ton of space. So I do think one reminder is good. That's a pretty good standard practice. I put those into like course evaluation surveys just to remind people who they're evaluating and what class it is by the time they get to page 2, so that they don't accidentally shift to somewhere else. But let's keep it short. That's what I'm saying. Is you're right. Less explanation, I think, is crucial the deeper we get into the survey. So.
Yeah, so let's try it with that. Please remember that all of your responses are confidential, anonymous. I think that might be kind of a middle ground there.
Yep.
And then we've changed it to, now we will ask when and where things in the previous question happened. Oh, that's so awkward. I wish Martina was here. Martina's really good at plain language stuff. And if the person who did them is connected with your school, we will not ask for the name of the person who harmed you. Please remember that you can skip any questions. If you would prefer not to see these questions, click here to go to the next section. And Holly, the reason we're not putting in the information about reporting is because we're not going to give them a place to write in the name. At the end of the survey, we will give them information. If you want to talk to someone at your school about what happened, here's where to make a report to the Title IX coordinator. Here's where to get confidential support. And the resources button will be on every page. So when you go to the resources button, that information will be available there as well. So they can open that at any time.
I have a suggestion, as long as I'm not interrupting somebody else's response. Very quick suggestion. I agreed with you, Rowan, that top of the page there, now we will ask, that feels awkward. What if we said, now we will ask when and where the things in the previous question happened, period, and then say, we will also ask broadly about, or we will also ask if the person who did them is connected with your school, but we will not ask for the name of that person who harmed you. That, like making the compound sentence the second one rather than the first one, feels like it reads a little more smoothly.
What if we just did it like that? We should probably have the other, right?
I would still say that I prefer to like have the previous sentence that we will ask about whether this person who harmed you is connected with your school, but there's no identifiable information of that person being asked in the survey.
Are we asking that, or are we asking what the relation is, the relationship or the connection to the person who harmed you? Like in general, we're not just asking if they're connected to this school, right? Or am I wrong?
I think in this section is mainly about like whether this person, is a student or faculty or staff.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Asking for their relationship if they were not affiliated with the school. So we will ask if the person who did those things is connected with your school. We will not ask for the name of the person who harmed you.
Should that person be persons with the conditional parenthetical S there? Yeah,
Yeah.
like that.
You guys are such geeks. I love you. Okay.
I'm wondering if, and I don't think this language is quite right yet, but if we wanted to add that getting shorter and shorter about the why, like why we're asking you these questions, if something around, like after we remind people that their responses are confidential and anonymous, we can include, and this can help your school create programs that help all of our students feel safe, or something like that. I know safety is a little bit of a loaded term these days. I'm wondering if we
Yeah.
keep something short and sweet like that to, because it's about programs, all these things, but those, a lot of students, if unless they're going through those are, I don't feel like they're obvious what we're talking about.
Okay. So we have that information up here at the beginning. So again, with the idea of making it shorter, it'll be in the entry form, and then it'll be here. They will describe the kinds of experiences students at the school are having, and your school may use the information to help improve programs that prevent or respond to sexual misconduct.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we go down here, and again, just thinking about making it shorter, not making it too repetitive, but kind of a reminder. And if we change that to your responses will help us understand the kinds of experiences students at the school are having, because these are really not, this information is really understanding the kinds of experiences. It's not, knowing that these things happen isn't really going to help change prevention or response, right? Altogether, these things might help change that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a little bit less concerned about this specific question 14, and more concerned about the when, where, and who question, about saying why we're asking for that level of detail. That's where I feel like we actually need the why a little bit more. I think that I would feel potentially more alarmed or paranoid about why you're asking that level of detail. I'd be like, okay, you're asking that stuff, I get it. But if I've experienced a lot of harassment and thinking about the other questions that are more focused on abuse and violence, I think that would cause me more alarm. So that's why I'm just thinking about the why specific to that question that we were just wordsmithing a moment ago around how we wanted to ask for the who and that kind of thing.
So if we move this, the problem is if we move this here, then we have to repeat it at every single question.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have it here, and we have to have it here, and we have to have it here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 4 times within this section. And that feels like a lot. Maybe, let's see.
Is this where we can consider that option of having it more explicit the first time and then each time making it much shorter and sweeter? And there's no question at some point there's going to be a flow. I mean, the reality is not all students are going to have experienced all of these things actually. So I'm less concerned if you have it in each one, because the students who experience sexual harassment in the classroom might not have also experienced sexual assault or domestic or dating violence. So they won't, and hopefully there will be some students who will say yes to every single one of these. Most students will not though, hopefully. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, really, right? It would take them forever to have to finish this.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Caroline, if we do this.
And I think we can say that, do the reminder about confidential anonymous up above. I don't think that needs to be in this section if we wanted to break it up a little bit. So we did, you know what I mean? Just to make it shorter here and then just focus on these are meant to help your school improve on programs or help whatever, whatever the language you want to use.
Just out of, okay, so do you think what do you think is the most important information in these sentences? What do you think is the most important information for students to have when they're responding to the details question?
That it's anonymous. That's for me at least.
I think that it's anonymous and that it's not going to trigger a report, which I know are essentially should be the same thing, but I think clarifying that might be helpful.
And how often do we want to remind them that they're not making a report?
I don't go. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I think for the when, where, who, we should remind them of it, because that's basically what a report will contain, you know, if you ask a little bit more detailedly. I think it would make sense if we put that there. But for like all the following questions that basically this, like, it's the same thing about when, where, whom, is a person has already seen that reminder of this is not going to be a report, then there's no need that we repeat that again and again and again when they fill out later forms that are basically the same kind of questions, just like just different kind of violence.
Can I note that while the language of no report will likely speak to everybody, that different schools may have a different language to sort of refer to what, and that I wonder if is there some, you know, might it be better to say no institutional action will be taken, or something that is a bit more inclusive of?
I'm wondering if we could take it a step farther and say, no one at your school will be notified or will be given this information. You know what I mean? Like, I have to be careful because we are giving this information to school, but
that's what I'm worried about too.
Because I'm worried that a lot of students don't understand the context of what report means here unless they're really familiar with Title IX. And same with Kelly, what you had just suggested.
Institutional action was the
But I also
go ahead.
I was just going to say, what Caroline said, I know for us, a lot of our students are worried that anybody would at our university in their program would be able to see their responses, or that would be information that was shared widely with their program. So I'm not just institutional action, but I don't know. Let me think about that.
Well, I think that this comes back to something that we've discussed before, and I'm not yet completely sure what the answer to it is, which is, I mean, the reason is, at least as I'm understanding, the reason why we have confidential and anonymous together there is because each school might have a slightly different procedure by which they do this, and each school will have to be instructed that you need to be sure that you're choosing the right word here, right? Because anonymous is a promise, it's a contract that no one can know, that even if they tried, they would be unable to. Whereas confidential means that only Kelly Strawn at Willamette University will ever have access to the data, and he has pledged, you know, both professionally and in this process, to never divulge to anybody, right? And so, I mean, I think that, I guess what I'm coming to is that we need to be careful that we don't wordsmith this around and around when the real actual solution is going to be conditional, and we'll need schools to know what they're doing, and that'll have to be included in the initial explanation, like the opening that says very clearly why it's either confidential or anonymous. So I don't know.
An idea might be, under those circumstances, can we remove the term confidential? Because no one should be able to connect any responses back to students. And let's say, please remember that all your responses are anonymous and cannot be connected back to your individual responses.
But that's what Kelly's saying. We can't necessarily promise that.
Right.
Oh,
all we can
schools
promise
will be able to do this, to see?
We are going to tell the schools not to do it.
Oh, bummer.
But I know, but they're not prohibited from doing it. Okay, not yet. based. Yeah. So I guess where the problem is, I'm not really worried about, like, Portland Community College is not gonna, like, I don't trust that. I trust that Portland Community College isn't gonna go through and okay, what's the IP address? Who's this connected to? But some of the very small schools that have like 40 students or 100 students, right? And it's the secretary who's the one who's processing this information. It becomes a little bit more challenging there. Just as an aside, one of the things that we've got Qualtrics. It's being purchased today. We should have access to SurveyMonkey. There's a license. They're trying to figure out what the status of the license is here at HEC right now. Both of those allow you to set the questionnaire to not report IP addresses. So the information goes from the student through SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics, and then you go to SurveyMonkey or Qualtrics and pick up the information, and you can set it to not give you the IP addresses. So it really can be anonymous. So that's what we're hoping will happen. But I kind of want to leave this, unless we can make a rule, and I'm not sure that we can, that no one is allowed to follow up on any of these responses to get information that would allow a report to be made. I don't want to promise that yet. Does that make sense?
Can
I think
ask a
that-
question?
Oh, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry I came late, folks. I'm sorry I got caught up. Anyway, I remember when we decided to do this as anonymous, we shared links so that we didn't have students' email addresses versus on some surveys, I don't know why I'm getting this bad thing, but on some surveys, we just said it will be confidential, and we sent out to students' email through our system. And so we knew the email and the student information, there was a connection between it. So I was wondering, when we're giving this, when colleges are giving it out, how are they giving it to students? Are they separating the material to know, or are they just sending them a link? And because if it's confidential, the student can go stop the survey, come back in at any time and start back off where they were. But if it's anonymous, once they stop the survey, they lose all their data.
Yeah, and that's the way we're going to have to set it up, because it's got to be anonymous, right?
Okay.
I mean, we can't, we don't want to give them a unique link, because then we could tell who had used the link and who had not. It's just going to be that they go to the survey, they enter their data. If they leave it without submitting it,
Then
and
it's
that's
not
the way
saved.
then it's not saved. And that's actually something we need to think about, because ideally it would be great if we could get at least partial data, right? Like, it'd be nice to know who started filling it out and then stopped halfway through, right? Was there any different, methodologically, you want to know those people who exited the survey without submitting it, was there any difference between them and the people who completed the survey, right? That would be really, really helpful to know.
Well, technically, that is technically can be saved, but what the researcher usually do is just go in and delete all incompleted data. So technically it's there, but because you don't want to, because the problem is you don't know if you're overcounting, because if the same person, they started, then they completed it halfway, then they start again, we don't know whether that's two separate people or the two of the same people. So that therein leaves the problem with overcounting. So therefore, you end up having to get rid of the incomplete information, especially because you don't know if it's the same person.
So we're going to need to specify to the schools that they should not count any data from surveys that were not completed.
Okay.
Right.
And
at the very end of the survey, if the person fills all this information out and then thinks, oh my God, I don't want them to have this, we need to have that last option, right? That nuclear option at the end that says, I by clicking here, I understand that my information will be completely deleted and will not be counted, or will be counted, or something like that, right? We need to let them know to submit this information so that it gets counted in the survey, click here. I think that's really important to give them that, because you might get to the very end of the survey and then just go, I don't know if I really want the school to have all this information.
Or once you put that as part of the submit if you want the school to have this information. And when they submit, that's an agreement. But from what Kelly was saying about whether how this is being reported, I may have come to the end, I may have misread. I assume that the school is getting the data and submitting the data to us. So the school is handling the data, but they're not interpreting the data or analyzing the data. We're doing that, right? They're just kind of passing the data up through us to analyze and do everything, right? Heck, when I say us, I'm sorry. Heck is doing that. Sorry.
Yeah, I think council is right there, Adea. That is to be determined in the implementation guidelines that we're going to write next. But yeah, the idea is that this, and what I've heard from our research and data person is that she is expecting that schools will submit the de-identified aggregated data to us.
Oh, aggregated. Okay.
Yeah, de-identified aggregated. So,
okay.
So we won't have the raw data to play around with.
Okay.
I know it hurts your researcher heart. I know, but
so the reporting thing that you were talking about is just saying what we're going to do with the data once we have it. So just saying that this instrument cannot be used to report the incident or something. Or did we say we wanted to do that? Because I remember having a prior discussion with you, with everyone saying how we did it at one point, saying this is not a reporting instrument. And then we gave resources where they can report something. So I thought that we said that if someone puts something down that's disturbing, that you would like this to be a reporting incident or something. I mean, instrument.
So we don't want them to be able to report from this. We want them to know that we want them to know that if they, and that's, Adea, that's the question that we're at right now, is how often we're going to remind them that they can't make that this is not making a report. Okay. So, and how to say that. So what we're doing right now is sorry, to get us back to kind of where we were.
Sorry.
We're looking at the question, and we've got the introductory information to the section, and then we have the questions that ask about these different things: sexual harassment, sexual, and then the follow-up questions. How often and how much information do we want them to have? So there's the discussion. We're going to tell them in the entry page, this is all anonymous, and we tell them when they start the survey, this is all anonymous, and then we're telling them at the beginning of each question section, this is anonymous. And then we're telling them in the follow-up question that this is anonymous. So at what point is it important for them to see that? And what point does that become redundant and interfere with them wanting to continue on with the survey? And so right now,
I remember when I did this, it was before they got into the juicy questions. So things that was going to require a lot of emotional toll or recall and things like that. So the follow-up questions, it would appear, I would think that would be more consistent with any kind of follow-up questions that goes in, where they would have to go into a little bit more cognitive detail.
And that's where we are right now.
Okay.
And this is the text we've been drafting.
Okay.
And then the question is, do we need to remind them that they are not making a report Do we need to say your responses are confidential, anonymous, and no report will be made? And then how do we make clear what making a report means?
Okay. Well, here, are they identifying the person or talking more about the incident? Or, okay, well,
Okay, so what we've got on the screen right now,
okay,
now we will ask when and where the things in the previous question happened. We will ask if the persons who did those things is connected with your school. We will not ask for the name of the persons who harmed you. Please remember that all of your responses are confidential, anonymous, or, probably anonymous, but we're hoping for anonymous. Please remember that you can skip any questions. If you would prefer not to see these questions, click here to go to the next section. Do they need more information in that, or is that sufficient?
can you just put, and this is not a reporting instrument or tool?
We are not sure that everyone will understand what a reporting instrument or tool is.
God dang it. That's when I'm gonna go back to what
Yeah.
what Lamet said. I know your name is not with Lamet, but I'm having brain farts right now, Kelly. This is what so Kelly said. So I think, I don't know. I'll let Kelly. I interrupted you, Kelly. You were about to say something. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
I thought you were
I
about to say
think-
something. Okay, go ahead, Belle.
I think a possible way to solve it is that I don't know whether it's possible or not, but I would be surprised if it's not possible. You can always put a hyperlink on report and then link to the school page of their own Title IX report procedure. If someone has question about what is report, they can click it and then jump to another page and actually read their school's own Title IX reporting procedure and what's that. And then
That's good.
that's
Go
a
ahead.
way to explain what is report to them without putting too many text in our survey. It could have negative influence if people just click the Title IX report and forget about the survey or stop doing the survey. It could reduce the chance that people complete our survey, but it could also be a good educational thing for them to at least learn what is the formal report procedure at their institution, I guess.
So my only concern with that is not every institution has a link or shares their reporting process publicly, which is obviously a concern. So that would be my only concern with the hyperlink piece. But otherwise, I completely agree. I think that's a great idea.
Every school has their Title IX coordinator on their website. So it could link
to their Title IX. So could we put that in bracket, link to Title IX coordinator or something?
I think we're getting way too deep in the weeds here. So if we want to have something about that, let's just say to make a report to your school, please click here, and then it goes to the Title IX coordinators page.
Yeah.
Could I make one final pitch? Oh, sorry, yeah. Ron. Go ahead.
That's okay. Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, can I make one final pitch to take that sentence and put that at the end and not put it there? I just feel like, we're trying to reassure people that they're not going to get identified. And that this, I don't know, I can see why we're thinking about putting it there. I can see why we need it there. I just feel like that should be one of those things at the end that says, where it wraps up and we say, we know that this may not have been an easy experience. Here are some resources if you need them. If you feel like you need to make a report, here's how to do it. It just feels like that would go well. It's sort of a summary at the end.
At the end of the section, yeah.
I just worry that this section is getting too tightly instructed here, even with just those 3 lines. But anyway, that's a thought. I could go either way.
I kind of agree. I feel like if we put this here, if we have that feels like enough information and enough choices too, right? If we put that information that, to make a report to your school,
it's a redirection of that. That's a great point, Rowan. That's a redirection of the task, and we probably don't want to do that. Yeah, That's a great way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, I worry that we're making it, we're talking about way more than one thing in that paragraph. So
can I jump in?
Yeah.
One thing I heard through this conversation is the concern that we have confidential anonymous in like every single question. I think that you can remove it from this one. I'll just note that if it's helpful. I think you have it right above, so I think that's fine. If we are still talking about letting people, just reminding people that this won't be a report. Like I know that we were just talking about not wanting to shift to this is how you make a report. If we're still feeling like we want to say something, and also once again, give the context of why we're not asking you to make a report. So why are we asking for this level of detail? I have a suggestion, and if I'm also hearing, because we've had like a really significantly robust conversation about this one. So I'm having a little bit of a hard time tracking if we're saying move on or are we still wordsmithing? I have a suggestion on it if we're still talking about it. If we're also saying this has gotten too complicated, let's move on, we can do that too.
So I think let's try this. Let's like go through this. And so you're looking at this for the very first time. You've never seen this before, okay? The next questions ask about experiences related to sex and gender that made you feel uncomfortable, intimidated, offended, unsafe, or unwelcome. Just to be clear, we're asking about things that someone else did to you that you did not want. The questions will ask you about what happened, where and when the experience or experiences happened, some information about the person or people who did the unwanted behavior. Please remember that all of your responses are confidential and anonymous. They will not be linked to your name, email, or other identifying information. Your responses will help us understand the kinds of experiences students at the school are having. You can skip any of these questions. If you want to skip all of these questions, click here to go to the next section. Since you enrolled at school, has someone done any of the following things? Please select all that apply. Now we will ask you when and where the things in the previous question happened. We will ask if the person who did those things is connected with your school. We will not ask for the name of the person who harmed you. Remember that all of your confidence. So I just feel like we're asking people to do so much reading here that's repetitive that we're going to lose them. I really feel, you know what I mean? If you're looking through this, you've already read the entry page, it had that information. You read the introduction before you started the survey, it had that information. The information at the beginning of this section had this information. Now we're giving you this information again. It just feels like I'm asking you to do so much reading that doesn't have anything to do with the question itself.
Yeah, Ro, can you scroll up half a page again to the bullet right there?
Sure.
Yeah, oh my goodness. I feel like we could now take that whole paragraph that we've been working on out of there. I forgot how close in proximity those details were, right? I think you're absolutely right. They're so close in proximity to those. I don't think we need to say all that again.
I agree with Kelly. I think that we can definitely just integrate the sentences that we've been discussing into the very beginning, introducing paragraph, and then save people from reading the repetitive information again. And if we still think it is important to emphasize that this is not a report, we can just have one small sentence at the end of the introduction paragraph being like, this does not constitute a report. If you would want to report, Title IX coordinator link.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is I think it would be helpful under that bullet around the language we have around how they're connected to the school. I thought that was really helpful. Like some information about the person or people who did the unwanted behavior, and if they're connected to the school, we will not ask their name. Something like that.
You have person in there back to back row on you.
Oops. Person. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Of all of the highlighting that Word does, you think it would do that one. See, it doesn't like all of, but it like, okay. So if we.
Can we just get rid of all of that narrative right there?
Yeah, let's take the whole thing out. I know we've all contributed mightily to that section, but
okay.
Survey
well, no, it's yeah.
Go ahead.
It's good discussion. And I think it's important to say, remember, their responses are confidential, anonymous. You can skip, or let's just say you can skip any questions because they already know it's anonymous. You can skip any questions, click here to go to the next section.
Mhm.
And
Like
we will
it.
ask, yeah. We'll ask. Now we will ask for some information about the incidents in the previous question. Now we will ask some information, some information. There we go. So, and then we've got the question changed to altogether, how many times did these things happen? And if it's one, then they go here. And if it's more than once, it goes here. Does that language work altogether? How many times did these things happen?
I think it does. Real fast, Ron, I was just going to recommend that you change incidents to experiences just for consistency of language. I think it'll be easier to follow.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, thank you. That's great. And that consistency is so important because that also because if you know what you're going to expect, like you're going to see exactly the same wording at the beginning, it makes it easier. You don't have to put the cognitive labor in again to read it because you already know. I will go through and change them all to this wording, okay? Just so we can do that. Okay, so looking now, getting back to just the reformatting. So for the gender-based harassment, we've got two different kinds of gender-based harassment that they might have experienced. And for the sexual orientation, oops, where did it go? There we go. Sexual orientation harassment, same thing. So yeah, gender-based harassment. And by the way, remember, they're not gonna, this will be in the code book or you know, the whatever we're calling the guide. So the schools will know that when we're asking about these things, we're asking, did you experience harassment based on your sexual orientation? But we're not gonna, that's not something students are gonna see. All right, and then I did the same thing for the, let's see, all the others have the same kind of things. Oh, this one, this is where Katie had, let me show you what it looked like before. Let me go to review and I'll show, let's see. It's showing, I'm going to show all of the markup. Okay. All right, so originally it said, since you enrolled at school, has someone done the following things, ? And then it was, watched me while I was undressing, was nude, or was having sex without first getting my permission. And then each of the options ended without first getting my permission. Katie felt like that read weird and suggested making the changes to, has someone done the following things without first getting your permission? And then watched me while I was undressing, was nude, or was having sex.
Makes sense.
I feel like we had it this way originally, and then somebody wanted us to add without first getting my permission to each of the options, but I want to make sure that this looks okay to everybody.
Yeah, I think we had it that way before. I think we've just been going back and forth with some things like, oh, so, but yeah, no repetitiveness.
Rowan, I would, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to note, we have another question like this later on, and I really appreciate removing without my permission at the end of each sentence. So I just recommend that we model the next one that has the same language, or the one in the future the same way. And when we get to it, I can remind you all. I haven't marked.
Okay, thank you.
Great minds think alike. That's what I was going to say, only I was going to take one step further and say, Rowan, I'd be all in favor of you change it. Anytime you see something like that, if you think you can take words out of the right side by putting them once into the left side, like, go ahead and do it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think it makes it a little easier, but okay.
Mhm.
All right, and then I'll change that. I'll change all of this wording in here. Same set of questions. So even though they look complex, hopefully they'll be fairly, after you read through them the first time or two. Okay, has someone done the following things? These are the stalking, and we have two kinds of stalking here. We had cut this way down. I think there were several other kinds of things, so we had cut it down to these two. And just a reminder too that these things, so if these were done by someone you were in a relationship with, they're going to get coded as the relationship abuse. Recognizing that someone that, may have done these things, you may have had some other kind of relationship with as well. And then here's the relation. So this is the question that will. So if you were not in, I have not been in a relationship since I enrolled in this school, will bounce you into the next section. You will not be asked to complete the intimate partner violence section. Okay. All right. And this is, we're talking about if you have experienced, okay. And then here, let's see. Oh, I had going steady because I've been hearing, this is so regional, right? Like people talk about going steady, but it could just be one school or one group of students. So Katie was like, that's really dated and you sound like an old. So I changed it to exclusive instead of steady. Does that make sense to folks?
I think that's smart. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so too. All right. And then these are behaviors that some people have experienced in relationships with intimate partners. And then we've got, okay, so this is where the question is this language too explicit? And I like it the way it is, but I'm totally willing to, let's have a discussion about what makes it too explicit? What could we do to make it less explicit?
If I could jump in real fast, I will note it feels better to me now than before, being that you don't have to answer it and then do all the follow-up questions per each one. So that alone, I think, made it significantly better. The other thing I was wondering, and this is, I feel like this kind of came up earlier, we're not 100% sure how this is going to come back in Qualtrics. And if after the previous questions and it says there's like a blank screen that says the next questions are about this issue. Mm-hmm. And we are gonna ask some questions that are a bit more explicit around some people about ways that intimate partner and relationship abuse may show up in a relationship. So say we're gonna give details about how we know it may show up. Mm-hmm. And just make sure we're giving people the heads up going into it. I think that before they get to some of the, like its own page, I think that in itself would make a big difference too.
Okay. So we don't want to frame it as intimate partner violence because people might just be like, oh, I haven't had intimate partner violence. Or if they're in an abusive relationship, they're not going to want to look at questions about intimate partner violence because that's part of it, right? Is being ignoring that's happening. So we might want to say something, what I think I'm hearing you say is that we might want to add something here that these questions may be difficult for some people to answer or these topics may be difficult for some people for different reasons, something like that. The same way we did sexual assault. Okay.
And what you named about calling it out is, I agree. I do think it needs to stand out though. That's where I think it needs to be like its page in itself. Because if we add it, I'm worried that if we add it to this section right here, where there's already a lot of information, no one's going to read it. So that's where I'm like, if you then say, okay, next, you read this, you're like, okay, that's what this is about next. And then this could be difficult for some people. I just think something like that would be helpful.
Yeah, I guess the way that I'm thinking of it is that each section will begin on a new page. But yeah, I think we need to have the content advisory, I hate saying content advisory, but you all know what I mean. I'm just going to put in here, add difficult topic language.
Whatever
We've
you
got-
do,
Yeah.
maybe it could be like a little red thing at the beginning of the page, like more difficult topic or whatever, or just a little phrase that's in red or something, and just be consistent whenever they see that red or something like caution, like a little caution symbol or something like that. And more difficult topic or something, and just be consistent with that whenever you get to something that's going to be that's going to be difficult.
I don't know if we can. I totally get what you're saying, and I think it's really important to have this in, like, you know, a fairly significant font. I don't know that we can necessarily think about in advance what's going to be most challenging for someone in this list, in this survey of really challenging experiences. But maybe we can just have, you know, maybe we can talk about the language. You know, some of these topics are maybe really hard, and just have that bolded or something.
Not all the topics include violence, right? This is progressive, right? Not all the topics include violence.
But we don't know what's going to be the most difficult for someone to, we don't know, just because I might experience something as being really triggering, even though, you know, somebody else might not. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm thinking of something, but I'm thinking of a way of just, if we have all the topics with violence or certain things coming together, maybe flagging the ones with violence is just saying violence or something, like a symbol or something, just before they get it, so that they'll know, hey, this set of questions have to do with violence or something like that. I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, you know, this can be, I mean, I think that anything can be really upsetting, right? Being tracked, like finding an Apple tracker in your bag after you've gone to the bar at night, could be that we don't know what could create post-traumatic stress symptoms in someone, right? I get what you're saying. I think maybe let's try to maybe just bold, you know, these topics may be difficult for some people for a lot of reasons. But I think that's kind of true throughout, right? I don't know that I can say, for example, that my experience of violence were less or more traumatic than somebody sending me videos of them having, you know, of them masturbating or something, right? Those could be equally traumatizing depending on what my experiences were. And violence may or may not be the actual physical being attacked may or may not be the most difficult experience that someone has had. I know that sounds weird, but I think that's true. So let's go ahead and add that difficult topic language, and remind, you know, and again, we're reminding people that you don't have to answer these questions, and you can go to the next section if you want to. Yeah, I mean, I know these can be really hard for folks, but I'm not sure how we can ask them about it without being specific about what we're asking about.
I have no suggested changes other than adding the difficult topic. So I agree that this is what helps people name their experience. So I do think they're very good. And I appreciate the change in formatting.
Yeah, and so I went through and kind of highlighted what we were asking about here. Here we're asking about verbal abuse. We don't ask about insults or put downs. I wasn't sure if you wanted to add an item for that or if you felt like this is enough items.
Could we just add a comma in here and say, or said things that hurt my feelings? That's not the right way. You know what I mean? Hurt feelings is not the right term, but could we just add a comma here and add a little bit more without it being too convoluted?
I think those are two concepts in one sentence. Things that made me afraid or embarrassed, rather than, and things that hurt my feelings. I feel like that makes the sentence or the option. So I think if we're gonna add it, I'd rather add it something like, they put me down. Something like that.
My concern with this one continues to just be that it's a very logical list, but it could just go on and on and on and on, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
I would like to, I'm fine with that addition you just made. I'd like to advocate, not very strongly, but just consider the first one has a qualifier at the end that none of the others have. Do we really need to include, even if they didn't mean to? I think I understand why we would include that people with various other places, we've tried to remind people that sometimes, whether we realize it or not, we rationalize things away. We don't think about them but I mean, it's inconsistent as a format with every other answer there because it has a qualifier when none of the others do. And then one other. Oh, sorry.
No, I was going to say I agree because I just noticed it because maybe it's not a matter whether they meant to, but that they did it. But go ahead. You were saying something, Kelly.
Oh, I was actually going to thank you for, I was going to make a second suggestion. I was going to suggest that we take the one in the middle there. They made threats to hurt me or others and put that at the end of the list, because I've been, while you all have been sort of talking about this, I've been looking at each one. I don't think that is going to overlap with any of the others, but I think that if you put it at the end, we kind of help minimize the risk that they feel like, well, a threat is a broad category, whereas all the others are specifics. Like, is there going to be any difficulty drawing a distinction between having been threatened or any of the others? If they've already answered all the others, then they get to threat, and that's fine. So I just think that's really esoteric. I understand that. I think it goes best at the end, just as a way of helping people interpret what it means.
I know part of this.
Not at the end, right before, right between they tried and between unsure. That's what I'm arguing for. But if everybody else doesn't think it matters, that's fine too.
I think part of the reason that it was there, Kelly, was that it felt like we were kind of increasing in intensity of experience, and that threats are worse than sleeping or than not being able to sleep, but not as intense as.
That's a good argument too. I mean, that's one of those this now becomes a good example of you can reason your way to two completely different outcomes when you're designing surveys, right? I put it back. That's actually a pretty compelling reason to leave it where it was. Actually, I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Something I wanted to mention too is that I think the options, I think it would be really important and helpful to specify examples that marginalize folks in particular experience. So I think naming like they threaten to out me to my community, or and I know that is a threat, but I think that all of these are so general, and I feel like it can maybe feel very isolating for queer folks, also like they threatened or they did prevent me from accessing my mobility device. And it can be way more general and kind of encompass that. I'd have to like think about the language, but I feel like that might be missing from these options.
So Holly, I think that's a really good point. I think that one of the things that we run into is that we are talking about over 150 questions right now, and we're trying to cut rather than add as much as possible. And we've got this here. They tried to control what I did or harm me in another way, in a way not listed above. We've got a free text option. That doesn't really catch that. We're not asking about, maybe we could say they did something, I don't know, how do we say that? They did something to invalidate my identity, or they harmed me based on who I am. I mean, I'm just not sure how to say that without getting into, a dozen different options. We're not asking about spiritual abuse, right? We're not asking about, did they threaten to deport me? Like, there's a lot of stuff we're not asking about here.
And maybe it's similar to they hurt me physically, where we give the examples next to it. Maybe that's something we can do for the other questions of giving specific examples that impact folks who are marginalized, just to make sure that I just feel like, to be honest, as a queer person, this feels a little bit isolating and almost like I would have to name my experience as like other. And obviously that's not the intention. And I agree. I don't want to add like 10 more options and that would open a can of worms. But I think just maybe being a little bit more specific about intentionally including those examples would really make a difference in my opinion. And again, I'd have to really think about how to frame that and what that would look like. So I'm not expecting us to be able to do that right now. But that's just something that came up for me.
I agree with you, Holly. So, and that's something that outside of this meeting, we could, if we all or some people want to go ahead, like I'm happy to take some time to think about the parentheses, couldn't say that, and trying to give, without being mindful of length, but also making sure that we can add a couple of examples. I know that I'd be happy to think on that. I also, along with that, hopefully this is not meant to shift. I think we might be able to remove one, which might create more space too. But I'm going to put the idea in the chat just to make it a little easier.
I've highlighted identity.
I was just gonna say, I'm very much in favor of trying to find something to go in there. I can totally see what you're talking about, Holly, is missing here, and that I think is very, very important. And if we could find one that we could take out, that would be great too. But I think it's very important to get in. Sorry, Rowan, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, okay, Caroline, what did you see that we could take out?
Well, I was just wondering, thinking back to what we were talking about around verbal abuse. And I know you added the second question. They put me down, insulted me, or said other things that hurt my feelings. I'm just wondering if we could say they yelled at me or made me feel afraid or embarrassed or insulted me. Because the reality is like, the way I'm looking at this, at least, is that for colleges and universities, for the level of detail that they're going to then do something with, I don't know if someone yelled or if someone insulted is going to be the level of detail they're going to care about in their campaigns that they do. So I'm wondering if we can just rephrase that one, get rid of that second one again. And that would just make it so either we can add something or it's remove one. We either add another full question or we've shortened this just a hair while covering a little bit more, along with, as we said, thinking about those examples around identities.
We are also not asking about any abuse that involves children, by the way.
Mhm.
So all of these, or maybe not every one of them, but several of these sort of violate the one object per one
Mhm.
response rule of survey design. I think that's okay broadly. I'm a little worried about the way we've just modified the first one now. I mean, on the second one, they stomped around, slammed doors, broke things, or threw things when they were angry. The object there feels like it's angry applied to all of those. They yelled at me, insulted me, made me feel afraid, embarrassed, or hurt my feelings feels like 3 or 4 different possibilities. And I just don't know if people are going to sort of say, well, they did one, but not all, or, I mean,
Right. So I think,
go ahead.
I think part of it is intent, right? So stomping around, slamming doors, breaking things, throwing
Right.
things when they were angry, that the intent behind that is intimidation, right? And we could leave off the, when they were angry, but, why were they throwing things, right? Why were they stomping around?
I
So
think
that's,
the angry there helps that sentence. I think that
Yeah.
one is useful the way it is. But what about the first one?
okay. So they yelled at me, insulted me, or said things that made me feel embarrassed or hurt my feelings, or I'm sorry, what do you want to change that to?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm lost. Okay.
I'm just not sure. Let's not get bogged down in this. We're right at the very end here. Like, go ahead and wrap this up. I'll think about it. If I can come up with a solution, I'll share it.
Okay, I'm bolding it to
Okay.
remind us that there's a
Okay.
question there.
Thank you.
And Rowan, just because I know you said you can't see the chat, Holly put in the chat a link to the power control wheel that gave pretty nice plain language examples as well that we could consider. Not the same level of detail, but they might still be really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah.
Thanks, Holly. Okay. Let's see, getting back down. Okay, so that's question 70. So let's look at 124 to 137. And I'm sorry, I know it's 2:30. Want to recognize that if people have to leave, that's okay. All right, so let's see. This is the that's a sexual assault. 124. Sorry, I'm losing track of where I am. There we go. Oh, okay, yeah. So for these, okay, so this one, these are long and we cannot change these responses because we're asking, after you had the sexual misconduct, did you develop any of the following issues? And if you had the issue, was it different? And so we have to ask for each one of them. I mean, well, I guess we could, do we want to do the same thing where we're like, yeah, I had that issue and it got worse? Do we want to just have a list of anxiety, depression, issues with memory, suicidal thoughts and attempts? Do we want to have all of those as, did any of these things happen or get worse after the sexual misconduct? We could just say that.
That was my recommendation when I reviewed it today.
Okay. Okay, so did any of so the question then is, after you experienced the sexual misconduct, did you develop any of the following issues, and or did they get worse? Well, I guess I'm just going to leave that the way it was, honestly. There we go. So that would be the question. After you experienced the sexual misconduct, did you develop any of the following issues? If you already had the issue, was it different? Was it worse after the experience? And then it'll be a list, the checklist will be anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, issues with memory, suicidal thoughts. So rather than have, okay, does that make sense? I'm sorry, I'm not sure I'm making sense. Does that make sense to folks? Are you getting it? So these will go away. And this will be like the checklist, right? Sorry, this is so hard to work, this mouse. Okay, there we go. And then so do folks see what I'm doing? Oh my God, did I lose you?
No,
We're here.
yes, we can see.
Okay. Oh, you're so quiet. I'm like, oh God, did I just like disconnect them or something? Okay. Yeah. Whoops, that's not it. Okay, so that becomes one question. And then suicidal thoughts or attempts, all of these then get moved over to this. I don't like that.
The one thing I'll note around any to remove, and I'm not saying we should remove it, but it felt odd. Anyways, the one about having a concussion or a traumatic brain injury, like I get it, but I feel like it's very different than all the other questions as well. Like it's all of these are we believe are caused by the violence. That includes concussion or brain injury, but this is the only one that's this type of physical injury. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm struggling because I say that, I'm like, but these others are physical injuries too, just a different type. So, but that one stuck out to me as not fitting the same way the other ones do.
Right.
That doesn't mean I think we should remove it. It's just something that I was sitting with.
So we've got physical injuries, and then we've got concussion or other brain injury. And I agree, the others are different than that. I wonder if we move this to something like this. Caroline, do you see what I'm doing here?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Do we want to make sure we are calling out concussion and other brain injury? I understand there's a lot more severity there. Do we want to, is there a specific purpose to have that called out instead of having it as an example of another physical injury?
So that one is personal for me, and I'll tell you why. Because I've been involved with in a couple of research projects where we've looked at traumatic brain injury as a sequelae of domestic violence and how underreported that is.
Mm-hmm.
And traumatic brain injury has exactly the same kinds of, like a lot of these symptoms, right? Not being able to focus, not being able to pay attention, being emotionally disordered, those kinds of things. Many of those are actually sequelae from the traumatic brain injury. The person may not have known that they had the brain injury, but I feel like it's important for us because it's so underreported, right? Mm-hmm. There have been so many times that I've talked, we've been reviewing a situation, and the person had a bump on their head, or they were, they blacked out for a minute when their partner knocked them down, but nobody ever follows up with them on that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it's partly for me, it's an awareness thing. But also I think it's one of those, I think it's really common in a lot of sexual assaults and physical abuse situations, and it doesn't get called out for some reason, just the way strangulation didn't used to get called out individually.
I appreciate that. Just wanted to make sure to clarify. I think that's great.
And I want to recognize too that a lot of these things, you're not necessarily, people don't necessarily get diagnosed with this stuff too, right? Yeah. So. But again, I also want to acknowledge that maybe I am just like too overly sensitive to that topic because that's the one I focused on that too much. And we can totally remove it if folks feel like it's really not that relevant.
I think it's
No.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
it's,
agree. I think, sorry, Carolyn.
no, please go.
I was just gonna say I agree. I think that was a really good explanation, and I feel like that is important data to have. And I also see what you're saying, that it just feels a little bit different. So I think maybe even just moving it closer to the physical injuries may make more sense.
Okay. All right. So, but overall, folks kind of prefer this format where instead of having each of these with all of the different follow-up questions, we have just each one of all of these are options in this list. Oops, darn it. So annoying. Yeah, no, I can't do that. Okay. Oh dear. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. So we'll have it that way. So after you experienced the sexual misconduct, did you develop any of the following issues? Or if you already had the issue, was it word and then I don't like the wording on this. Kelly, are you still there? Radea, can you help with that? Because that's really two questions, isn't it?
Can that be a follow-up question? Sorry, you didn't ask me. You asked it. That's what.
Well, if
What's
it's a
that?
follow-up question, then we've got to have it. It has to ask for. I'm not sure how we would format that without having without listing all of those things again.
You're talking about the STEM here after you experienced the sexual harassment, I mean,
Mhm.
sexual misconduct, that you develop any of the following issues, or if you already had the issue, was it worsened? I think that's two separate questions. Can you make this into two questions?
We can, but we need to list all of the options again twice, right? Or, I mean, how would we do that if we said,
Let's see.
see, that it doesn't work that way either, because if you, that's the problem. If you already had the issue, did you develop any of the following issues? That's why we
How
had.
about making that a fourth option? Already had the issue, but worsened or something.
This is going to be a list of all of these things. Like I'm going to move all of
Oh,
these. Yeah, I'm going to move all of these into the checklist.
in that one checklist?
Yeah, and yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Like
In
like
that
we do
one
for all of the
checklist?
others.
Okay.
Yeah, like we do for the others, right? So
Yeah.
like up here, I lost a scholarship, I had to borrow money.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah. But that checklist is mighty big. Is there any way those checklists can be like grouped together? Like based on being related? Because that looks like about 10 or 12 things, option, maybe more. Is there any way to clump them together, like, because they're kind of related to each other? Like,
What would you suggest?
I would have to go through it and see how I can clump it together. Let's see. Go back to the top ones. I don't have it open, so I'm just relying on this.
Okay.
Anxiety, let's see, memory, suicidal thoughts or attempts, eating, emotional. They're all kind of outcomes. Oh,
Yeah.
let's see. Jesus. I'm sorry. I can't think of any kind of separation right now. But sexual.
So I guess, so the list is one thing.
There's a
is there any-
way, there's a way you can do it. You can have a major question, because I'm thinking about it, a major question, then everything listed here, but then just say worsen or began, worsen or began. So it's like
That's kind of what we had originally.
you had it originally like that,
Yeah.
and it just says worsen or began. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Yeah, that's we had each one of them individually, and instead, so we can list them all with the individual response options, or we can list them as a list of possibilities.
Yeah, they'll make it one question, or do we need to, okay, did you develop? Well, then just keep it all as one and just say, we just can't tell whether they developed the issue or whether it made it worse. We'll just say it either made it worse or it created the issue. That's the only thing we could say about it. We just won't have that distinction. And is it necessary that we have the distinction?
So you mean just, did you have any of the following? We could just say, were any of the following issues a concern for you?
Okay. Yeah, because this doesn't matter really if the condition created it or made what was already there worse. So
Yeah, we're not asking them to say, yes, it was caused by this. We just want we just want to know after you experienced
after the incident was a concern. Yep, then that's the way to do it. And then
does that work for everyone? Is there anybody else here? Sorry.
Whoever's left here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Carolyn left too. Yeah, I think that'll solve that two thing. Just say whether it was a concern.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay. Still not really happy with a concern for you. But
Well,
did you have any of these issues?
yeah. Did you experience any of these issues?
So we've got after you experience the sexual misconduct.
Oh, I already have experience there. Okay, sorry. Did not see that.
That looks good to me. I like that actually. How are other people feeling about that?
Okay. Yeah. We just want to know whether they experienced it and what's, after that happened. Yep. So that'll be that. Yeah.
All right. And then the only other one was the people who work at this school do a good job of protecting students from sexual misconduct. I hate that. I mean, I know what I'm asking here, but I just really don't like the way that.
You don't want to use the word sexual misconduct?
Well, no, I think it was the people, because we asked about sexual misconduct. We mentioned that earlier, that we're going to say.
Could you just say my school?
Well, we had it that way, and then I think I was asked to change it to the people who work at this school. So
Oh.
rather than my school does a good job.
Because they don't want to say it at the school
Mhm.
level, but
Yeah,
you
I mean,
could
if it
say
was
some
up to
people.
me, yeah, I would say this school does a good job. That's what I would say.
Yeah, because I
I
feel
don't
like
know
the people, I mean, that's very broad, and there may be people at the school that they do feel like protects them and some that very much don't. So I feel like that's a very hard question to answer.
Yeah, I would think we're interested at the school level because there may be one or two people who are advocates. Because I can think of, I don't want to relate it too much. This is recorded. Well, I can think of an incident where there were a few advocates or people who were, what do they call, fire starters or whatever, who kind of substituted for the school's duties,
Mhm.
meaning they put it upon themselves to be the protectors and tried to
Mhm.
work overtime. But unfortunately, until things changed at the school, it wasn't a school policy. So, yeah, I would think for what we're looking at, we want the school to change.
I agree.
All right. I'm much happier with that wording. Thank you. Oh my gosh, you guys, that's it. All right.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah. Look,
You
there's
did
still
it.
two of you there. Okay. Oh, bless her. Bless them. We lost Kelly, we lost Belle and Caroline, but thank you so much for sticking with us. Okay, so these are this is so helpful. I love wrestling through all of this stuff, even though it's like an enormous amount of work. Thank you so much
Everybody
for
has
all
to
of the
wrestle.
labor. I know, right?
Thank you. I mean, Rowan, I think Kelly, everybody, Carolyn, it's just, it takes a committee. It takes a bunch of people putting forth
Yeah.
effort trying to get this done and thinking through these topics. So, and then even after that, and once you do the focus groups and all that, you're still going to figure out something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, I did send you an email about focus groups because there was some people that